My parents slapped me across the face and screamed, "Without money, you're nothing but a parasite." Those words cut deeper than the sting on my cheek. But what I did next turned their world upside down. I'm Bethany Price, 36 years old, and this is how I fought back against their betrayal. Growing up, I was the forgotten child in my own home. My parents poured their love, time, and money into my older sister, her dreams, her projects, her future, while I was left to fend for myself. The only person who truly cared was my paternal grandfather. My dad's father, the one who saw my potential and left me something to secure my future. But my parents had other plans, convinced they could control me and discard me whenever they wished. Years later, when they came begging for cash, I wanted to believe they had changed. That illusion shattered when they lashed out, hands and words striking me during a fight over money. Parasite, they called me, as if I were the one leeching off them. My heart pounded, my face burned, but I stayed calm. I pulled out a stack of documents and said, "A parasite, huh? Let's see who's really living off others." Their faces froze and silence swallowed the room. What did those documents reveal? Stick around to find out. Have you ever been betrayed by the ones you trusted most? Share your story in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and join me to uncover this family drama. Trust me, the ending will shock you. Growing up in Springfield, Missouri, I felt like a shadow in my own home. My parents' world spun around my older sister, their shining star, while I struggled for recognition, invisible in their eyes. It wasn't just neglect, it was a choice that fueled my drive to prove them wrong. My father, Kevin, and my mother, Ann, ran a modest accounting firm, earning enough to keep us in a neat two-story house with a trimmed lawn. But their attention, their pride, their money, all flowed to my sister, 3 years older. She had private art lessons, fashion design workshops in Kansas City, and even a boutique funded right after high school. She's a visionary, Mom would beam, signing another check. Meanwhile, when I needed money for school books or college prep courses, I was told to make do. My grades were strong, my ambitions just as real, but they didn't matter. I once asked Dad for $30 to join the school's journalism club. He shrugged. "Focus on something useful, Bethany." Yet when my sister needed $1,000 for a boutique display, he handed it over without hesitation. I learned to fend for myself early. At 15, I babysat to buy my own clothes. By 16, I was bussing tables at a local diner, saving every dime for college applications. My parents didn't notice. They were too busy applauding my sister's fashion shows or rescuing her from another failed, brilliant idea. I'd drag myself home after a late shift, hands smelling of grease, only to hear Mom praising her daughter's artistic flair. I ate in silence, the sting of being overlooked burning in my chest, but I vowed to rise above it. The one person who truly saw me was my paternal grandfather, Harold, a retired businessman. He had built a small manufacturing company from the ground up. He'd pull up in his beat-up pickup, calloused hands carrying books or tools to share. "You've got fire in you, Bethany," he'd say, his voice calm but firm. "Don't let anyone dim it." We'd spend hours in his garage fixing a carburetor or balancing a ledger, while he told stories of outwitting rivals and scraping by on grit alone. Those afternoons were my refuge, a place where I mattered. He didn't just teach me skills, he showed me I could stand on my own. When I was 17, everything shifted. Grandpa had battled heart disease for years, but he never let it slow him down. One evening, he called me over. His hands trembled as he poured tea, but his eyes still carried that spark. We talked for hours about his business, my dreams, and the importance of never giving up. "You're stronger than you know," he told me, gripping my hand. A week later, he was gone. His heart gave out, and mine felt like it did too. At his funeral, I stood by his casket, tears streaming, while my parents comforted my sister, who had barely known him. Mom whispered about honoring his memory, and Dad nodded solemnly, but their words rang hollow. I clung to Grandpa's lessons, vowing I'd make him proud. I kept pushing forward, working harder to afford college, dreaming of a life where I wasn't just the spare child. My sister's boutique opened with fanfare, bankrolled by my parents while I counted nickels for bus fare. The unfairness gnawed at me, but I turned it into fuel. Grandpa's voice echoed in my head, "Rely on yourself, not handouts." I didn't yet know that his faith in me would soon uncover a secret that changed everything. The morning after my 18th birthday, I knew I couldn't stay. The truth hit me like a freight train. My parents would never see me as they did my sister. I had to break free, build my own path, and prove I was more than an afterthought. That choice had been building for years. I'd watched my parents funnel their energy into my sister's boutique and endless next big thing while my own dreams were brushed aside. I wanted to study journalism to write stories that mattered, but when I asked Mom for help with college applications, she sighed. "Why bother? Your sister's the creative one." Dad was no better, brushing off my request for $50 for a college tour with, "We're stretched thin as it is." Yet the night before my birthday, I overheard them planning to co-sign a loan for her boutique's expansion. I had just been accepted to community college and they hadn't even asked about it. That cut deeper than words. I packed a single duffel with clothes, a few books, and the small notebook Grandpa Harold had given me. Inside, he had written, "You're tougher than the toughest storms, Bethany." He'd passed a year earlier, but those words became my anchor. With $300 saved from diner shifts, I left a note on the counter. "I'm moving out. Don't worry about me." They didn't call, text, or ask questions. Finding a place in Springfield wasn't easy. I scoured classifieds until I found a tiny studio, peeling wallpaper, leaky faucet, barely bigger than a closet. Rent was $200 a month, draining most of my savings. To survive, I worked mornings at a coffee shop and evenings at a grocery store. Between shifts, I enrolled at Ozarks Technical Community College, majoring in communications. Tuition was steep, but I scraped by with scholarships and late-night study sessions fueled by instant noodles. Those first months were brutal. I'd collapse on my lumpy mattress, exhausted, wondering if I'd made a mistake. The loneliness was heavy. Friends had their own lives, and my family was a distant memory. But whenever doubt crept in, I opened Grandpa's notebook. His words reminded me of his lessons, resilience, resourcefulness, and the strength of standing alone. I wasn't just surviving, I was building step by grueling step. Balancing 2 jobs and school left little room for anything else. My days started at 5, opening the coffee shop before rushing to class. Nights ended in the grocery aisles, stocking shelves until my arms ached. I budgeted every penny: $10 for groceries, $5 for laundry, the rest for rent and books. Some nights I cried, overwhelmed, but I never thought of going back. My parents' house wasn't home anymore. It was where I'd always be second best. Slowly, I found my rhythm. Professors noticed my drive, one even recommending me for a scholarship that covered my second semester. At the cafe, I befriended a coworker, Sarah, who slipped me extra pastries when the manager wasn't looking. Those small kindnesses kept me going. By the end of my first year, I had straight A's, proof that I could do this. I wasn't chasing dreams funded by my parents. I was carving my own future, one hard-earned dollar at a time. Looking back, those years taught me more than any classroom ever could. Grandpa's notebook never left my side, a reminder I didn't need my parents' approval to succeed. I was determined to keep climbing, unaware that a secret from my past was waiting to resurface. 4 years later, I stood tall in my cap and gown. The journey from a cramped apartment to this moment was a victory I had earned through sweat and determination, far away from the family that had once cast me aside. Graduating from Missouri State University was a milestone I had once thought out of reach. I had transferred from community college, piecing together scholarships and part-time jobs to cover tuition. With a communications degree, I landed a job at a small advertising agency in Springfield. The work was fast-paced, demanding, and creative, but I adapted. Within 5 years, I rose to the position of creative director, overseeing campaigns and earning $350,000 a year. It was proof that I had never needed my parents' support. At the company, I met Alan Moore, a graphic designer with a quiet confidence. Late-night brainstorming sessions turned into something deeper, and before long, love blossomed between us. We married in a simple ceremony at a local park surrounded by friends who had become the family I chose for myself. A year later, our son Owen was born, a bright-eyed boy who filled my days with joy. Life felt complete in a way I had never imagined back in that tiny apartment. Tammy King, a college friend, became my rock-strong, funny, and unafraid to speak her mind. Whenever I mentioned my parents, she would say, "Why bother with them? They never bothered with you." She was right. I kept my distance, focusing on the life I had built. I hadn't spoken to my mother, father, or sister in years, and I was perfectly fine with that. Then came the shock. A letter arrived from a lawyer in Springfield, the one handling my grandfather's estate. Grandpa Harold had left me shares in his manufacturing company, valued at $100,000. Inside was a handwritten note: "Bethany, your parents will always put your sister first. Protect what's yours." I sat in silence, reading his words again and again. I had never known about this inheritance. My parents had known but never told me. That betrayal reopened old wounds. Why had they hidden it? What else were they concealing? I called the lawyer to confirm. The shares had been held in a trust managed by my parents until I turned 25. I was now 36, and the trust had matured, yet no one had ever informed me. Questions flooded my mind. Had they spent the money? Neglected it? I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just another way they had tried to erase me. Tammy urged me to dig deeper. "You deserve answers." I wasn't ready to confront my parents yet, but I knew that confrontation was inevitable. My career kept me grounded. Leading national campaigns, I poured myself into work and family. Owen's laughter and Alan's steady presence reminded me of what I had built. Yet Grandpa's note lingered in my mind, a warning I couldn't ignore. I was no longer the invisible girl, but the past was resurfacing, threatening to unravel everything I had fought so hard to achieve. One quiet evening, a message from Anne appeared on my phone. After 18 years of silence, seeing her name was a jolt, dragging me back to the past I'd fought to escape. The text was brief, almost desperate. My mother wrote that she and Dad were struggling, financially drained by my sister's failing boutique. She asked for $10,000 to cover debts, insisting it was a one-time plea. My first instinct was to delete it. I had built a life without them, my career, Alan, our son Owen. Why should I help now? Yet curiosity, or perhaps a flicker of old loyalty, stopped me. Her tone felt off, too polished, like a rehearsed script. I called Tammy, my college friend and confidant. "They're crawling back because they need something," she said bluntly. "Don't fall for it." Her words echoed my doubts. My parents had never supported me pouring everything into my sister. Why reach out now? I decided to dig deeper. On a hunch, I contacted Mr. Larson, the family lawyer in Springfield, who had handled Grandpa Harold's estate. I asked if there were any unresolved matters tied to his will. Days later, Larson sent me a folder that turned my world upside down. Grandpa had left me company shares worth $100,000 with a handwritten note. "Bethany, guard your future. Your parents will always choose your sister." The documents revealed the truth. Mom and Dad had sold the shares years ago, funneling the money into my sister's boutique without my consent. They had been my guardians until I turned 25. I was now 36, and they had never told me. The betrayal cut deep. I had trusted them to honor Grandpa's wishes, but they had stolen what was mine to prop up their favored child. Anger rose, tempered by cold resolve. I hired an auditor to trace the funds. The report confirmed my fears. Every cent had gone into my sister's failing business, leaving nothing for me. Each transaction was proof of how they had erased me, just as Grandpa had warned. That night, I sat with Alan at the kitchen table, papers spread out. He squeezed my hand, his voice steady. "You don't owe them anything," he said. but you need to decide what's right for you. Upstairs, Owen slept soundly, his soft snores over the monitor reminding me of the life I had built despite them. Tammy's advice echoed, protect what's yours. I couldn't let it slide, but I wasn't ready for open confrontation, not yet. After days of weighing my options, I chose a middle ground. I sent Mom a check for $5,000, half of what she had asked for, with a letter enclosed. This is the last you'll get from me. Don't contact me again. It wasn't about the money, it was about drawing a line. I had spent years proving I didn't need their approval and I wouldn't be pulled back into their chaos. The auditor's report, neatly filed, was my insurance. If they pushed further, I had proof of their betrayal. As I sealed the envelope, a strange calm settled over me. Grandpa's note tucked in my desk was my beacon. His faith in me had carried me through struggle, and now it fueled my resolve to hold firm. My parents' choices no longer defined me, but their actions had consequences, and I was ready to face them. Weeks later, a frantic call from Anne interrupted my workday. Her trembling voice announced that my father had suffered a stroke, and their home was on the brink of foreclosure. She begged for $300,000, calling it their last hope. The urgency felt rehearsed, stirring the same unease as before. I hung up, my mind racing. This wasn't just their crisis, it was a test of whether I'd bend again. The auditor's report from months ago, proof of how they had sold my inheritance to fund my sister's boutique, still burned in my mind. I wasn't the naive girl who had left home anymore. I told Tammy I needed to face them, not for their sake, but to close the chapter. She insisted on coming, loyal as ever. We drove to Springfield, the streets both familiar and foreign. Their once pristine house now had an overgrown lawn and peeling paint, a reflection of their unraveling lives. Inside, Mom greeted me with a strained smile while my sister was conspicuously absent. Too busy, Mom claimed. Dad sat slumped in a recliner, frail and silent, his eyes avoiding mine. I clutched the folder of audit documents, my anchor in the storm. We need the money, Bethany, Mom pressed. You're doing well, can't you help us just this once? I steadied myself. I explained I had already given $5,000, more than they deserved after years of neglect and betrayal. Her face twisted, and then she slapped me, spitting the same venom as years ago. You ungrateful parasite. Tammy stepped forward, fierce, but I held her back. This was my fight. I kept my voice calm. You don't get to rewrite history, I said, opening the folder. I spread the audit papers across the coffee table, every page a testament to their deceit. The documents showed how they had sold my shares worth $100,000 to bankroll my sister's boutique without my knowledge or consent. I pointed to the dates, the signatures, the transfers. You stole from me, I said, locking eyes with Mom. Grandpa Harold trusted you, and you betrayed us both. Dad shifted uneasily but stayed silent. Mom flushed, searching for excuses that never came. Tammy cut in. Nothing to say, she challenged. Mom stammered about family sacrifice, but her words rang hollow. I saw my sister's shadow in every lie, her dreams always first, even at my expense. I told them I would give nothing more. The house, their pride, was not my burden. I had built my career, my family, with Alan and Owen without them, and I would not let them tear it down. As we left, I felt lighter. The girl who once shrank under their judgment was gone. Grandpa's words echoed, guard your future. I had done just that, standing firm with proof in hand. But I knew their desperation wasn't over, and I braced for what might come next. The next morning, I sat with a lawyer in downtown Springfield. The confrontation with my parents had steeled me, and I was ready to reclaim what was mine. Mr. Larson, the attorney who had uncovered their financial deceit, laid out a clear path forward. The audit papers, proof that my inheritance had been funneled into my sister's failed boutique, were my weapon. This wasn't just about money, it was about justice. Before I filed the lawsuit, a flood of messages from my parents demanded I send money to save their home from foreclosure. Their pleas came laced with guilt, accusing me of abandonment. When I refused, their tactics shifted. Vague posts appeared on my mother's social media, painting me as a selfish daughter who had turned her back on family. Friends sent me screenshots shocked at the lies. Ungrateful one post read, "The words stung, but I recognized them as a desperate attempt to shame me." Tammy urged me to hold firm. "They're grasping at straws," she said. "Don't let them get to you." I moved forward with the lawsuit charging Kevin and Ann with breach of fiduciary duty. Backed by solid evidence, the case moved quickly. In court, I watched them squirm as the judge examined the records showing how they had diverted $100,000 from my shares to fund Krista's boutique. Their defense-weak claims about family needs crumbled under questioning. The judge ruled in my favor, awarding me $200,000 in damages, including interest and legal costs. It was more than a financial victory. It was validation. The consequences were swift. Their house, once a symbol of pride, was seized to settle debts. They moved into a modest rental on Springfield's outskirts. My sister, stripped of support, took a retail job, her fashion dreams reduced to ringing up sales. I learned this through acquaintances, not from them. The social media attacks stopped after the ruling, replaced by silence. No explanations, no apologies. Cutting them off entirely was liberating. I blocked their numbers, deleted their messages, and tuned out the whispers from mutual contacts. Their smear campaign had backfired, revealing their desperation rather than my flaws. I was no longer the girl chasing their approval. My life with Alan and Owen was my anchor. At home, I poured myself into Owen's laughter, Alan's quiet support, and the future we were building. Those simple moments, watching Owen chase a ball, sketching campaign ideas with Alan, became my sanctuary. The settlement money stayed in a trust reserved for what lay ahead. Grandpa Harold's belief in my resilience echoed in my mind, his notebook still resting on my desk. He had seen my strength when my parents hadn't, and this victory honored his faith in me. Their choices had once wounded me, but they no longer held sway. One evening, Tammy raised her glass. "You didn't just win. You rewrote your story," she said with a grin. I nodded, glancing at Owen's drawings on the fridge and Alan's steady gaze across the table. This was my life now, built on my terms, free from their shadow. Back home, I watched Owen kick a soccer ball in our backyard. His boundless energy under the fading sun reminded me of the life I'd fought to build. The $200,000 from the lawsuit sat in a trust, a hard-won symbol of justice, but I wanted it to do more than mark a victory over my parents' betrayal. I wanted it to create something meaningful, something lasting for my son and for others who had faced struggles like mine. I dedicated the settlement to a scholarship fund in Grandpa Harold's name, created to secure Owen's education and support kids from difficult backgrounds. Partnering with a local charity, I helped design a program to identify children with grit, those who refuse to let hardship define them. Reviewing applications became a routine I cherished, each story of perseverance echoing my own. I often pictured Grandpa nodding in approval, his lessons of resilience woven into this legacy. The fund wasn't just financial aid, it was a promise that potential should never be buried under neglect or favoritism. One quiet afternoon, I knelt beside Owen, his soccer ball at his feet. "You're enough, just as you are," I told him, my voice steady. "Family is the people who lift you up, not just the ones you're born to." He looked at me, curiosity shining in his young eyes. Alan joined us, resting a hand on my shoulder. "We choose each other, buddy," he said, his voice gentle. Teaching my son about self-worth felt like reclaiming the love I once sought from my parents. Looking back, I saw the arc of my journey clearly. At 18, I left home with only $300, a notebook from Grandpa, and a heart heavy with rejection. I scraped by, built a career in advertising, and found Alan and Owen my true home. My parents' favoritism, the theft of my inheritance, and their cruel posts online had shaped me, but they no longer held me captive. Every step from late-night shifts to standing against them in court taught me to guard my worth. Grandpa's wisdom guided me, his belief in me a light through the darkest years. Tammy, my steadfast friend, summed it up over dinner one night. You turn their mess into something beautiful, she said with a fierce smile. She was right. My chosen family, Alan, Owen, and Tammy, gave me the strength my blood relatives never did. The lawsuit, the audit, the confrontation weren't just about righting wrongs. They were about proving I could rise above betrayal and building a life rooted in love and purpose. The scars remained, but they told a story of survival, not defeat. As I watched Owen drift to sleep, his small hand clutching his soccer ball, I thought of the children the scholarship would reach. They too would face neglect, doubt, and betrayal, but they could overcome it just as I had. My story wasn't about holding grudges. It was about standing tall. To anyone listening, I'd say, this: protect your heart, but don't close it. Surround yourself with people who see your worth and fight for you as you fight for them. My parents and sister chose their path, but I chose mine, one built on hard work, love, and the courage to keep going. Grandpa taught me that strength lies within, and I pass that truth to Owen, to those kids, and to you. You are enough. Build your life and don't look back.